So again, this task is also a bit complex like the previous one. So first we'll start with the easier stuff like creating objects and models. Also, for this task we will have to create two different services. So let's start. Let's start with actually creating some exceptions. So first one, instantiation exception. Sorry, instantiation exception. That. Okay. So the next one is going to be bean exception, like that. To be like it will extend the instantiation exception. Okay, so post construct exception also extend the instantiation exception. What else? We have the pre-destroy recursion exception, which will extend runtime exception. Okay, like that. Okay, so for now, those are going to be the exceptions that we're going to need. So for the models, we're going to need one model which is like also service model, but more specifically for beans. So service bean details extends service details. Also, I forgot to make that generic. Okay, so private final method, origin method. I'll explain why we need that. Private final service details road service. Okay, so just a second. I have to accept the type of the class also. Then yeah, for now this is going to be okay. So this sets service type, not root type, but bean type. Okay, so why we need origin method? Because as you know, service annotations are being beans are being created from methods. So if we want in the future to revolve this bean, we need to know its origin. So this is its origin method. And as far as just a second, let me close those. Bean. Okay. As far as root service goes, this is the actual class. So in that case, it will be test2. This is a class that contains this. So we will need an instance of this class and this method as well to be able to revolt the bean. So that's why we're adding those. Okay, just a second to see what else would we need from here. So this we got, this we don't need, this we don't need. Instance, okay. Okay, those we don't need because we don't have, for any third party, we don't have post and pre-destroy, so we can leave them as they are. Although for beans, I'll just in case say beans new method 0, like that, just to be safe. Okay, So let's make getters for those two. Like that. No, sorry. Get root service. Okay, so we got that figured out. I'll show you where we're going to need this. But for now, let's create the first service of both of two in total. This one is going to be called object instantiation service. It will have void create instance of service details and constructor params. Constructor params throws instantiation exception. Void create bean instance, bean service bean details. That's all we need for service bean. Throws bean. What was it? Bean instantiation exception. Okay. And also we're going to have one called destroy instance service service details. Also, which will throw the destroy execution exception. Okay. Now let's create the implementation for that service. So object instantiation service implementation. Okay. So here first we have to make sure that service details get target constructor first. Now we need to make sure that the constructor and the constructor params have the same length. So if constructor params length is not the same as the target constructor that get parameters count, throw new instantiation exception. Invalid there's count. Okay, actually like that to be more descriptive. So sorry. Message. So here is going to be string format this and service details get service type get name. Yes, like that. Okay, so this seems okay. Now after we got that, let's go object instance equals service details, target constructor new instance constructor params. So surround with try catch that and just then rethrow it. So throw new instantiation exception. I don't think we didn't get the right exception. That's the right exception here. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of sad. So we have a duplication of names. Okay, I guess we'll have to rename that. Okay, let's see. Instantiation exception. So, okay, so that should be better. Like that. So when we go to the implementation, it already has it done, so yeah. Also, this can be added here, so we don't need that in catch. Okay, so that instance that we got here, now we have to set it service details at set instance. Okay. Let's see. We're getting object, that's not cool. Well, we can, yeah, well, we can just set it object instance and then we can cast it right here. Not a really clever solution, but obviously we always set our instance from like in object type, so there's no way we know what we're setting as an instance. So I think that's pretty much okay solution. Okay, so object, and then after we've created that, we need to call the post construct. So private void call post construct of that service details. So this call post construct service details. This also throws post construct exception. Okay, so if service details get post construct method equals no, just return. Otherwise, service details get post construct method that invoke service details get instance. Okay. Now mix around with try catch again and rethrow it. Like that. Alright. Let's name that to invoke post construct. Maybe it looks a little better, I don't know. Okay, so we've got that. Now let's go to creating a bean instance. Okay, so here instead of using the constructor, we need to rely on the origin method and the root service. So service bean details get origin method, and service details get root service. I can even say get instance like that. Okay. Now I can say object instance equals root instance equals origin method dot invoke root instance like that. Rethrowing the exception again. Okay, so now that instance we need to set it service bin details, set instance. We don't need to call post construct here since that's a third party class, so we're good to go here. So to recap, we have the origin method, which is something like this, and the root service, which is this. So in order to invoke method, you need one instance and the actual method, so that's what we're getting, and the result is the instance, so we're setting that instance. Okay, so for destroying, what we need to say is if service detail get pre-destroy method is different than null, we need to say service details get pre-destroy method invoke service details get instance like that. So now we try catch again. I'll throw the exception. Like that. And finally service details set instance of null. So we're sure that there is no instance for this class. Okay, so we currently cannot test this without the other service that we need to create. So I see a little error here. Const post const. Okay, so currently we can't test this service without the other one because they both rely on each other. So I guess we will start with the other one and we'll test both of them in the end. Okay, so let's continue. It's a new day. Yesterday got really late, so I was already tired, so I decided to continue today. So I haven't touched the code at all, so we're continuing where we left it from. So before creating the other service that I mentioned, we need to create one more configuration and one more model. So let's create the configuration and let's call it instantiation configuration. Extends base subconfiguration. If you don't remember, base subconfiguration is what gives us this end, or otherwise said empty exit way for getting back to the magic configuration itself. So here we're going to have only one configuration value, which is going to be private int maximum number of iterations. Okay, so I'll explain why we need this once we go to the service, but for now let's just make it configurable. Okay, so public instantiation configuration. Sorry about that. So this maximum number of iterations equals, now let's go to constants and say static final int max number of instantiation iterations equals iterations equals 100,000. Yeah. Okay. So constants max number of. Okay. So public instantiation configuration set maximum number of allowed iterations. So actually int num, and this maximum number equals num. Return this, and also getter for this. Let's rename that actually. So sorry about that. Let's rename it to maximum allowed. Okay. Okay, so our configuration is done. Now let's create the model. The model will be called enqueued service details. Okay, so it will have private final service details. Sorry about that. Okay, it will also have private class like that, array of classes, which will be its dependencies, like so. Also, let's make it final. Okay, it will have private final array of objects, dependency instances. Hope you can see where we're going with that. Okay, so let's actually constructor is going to be only include service details like that. So this service details equals service details. This dependencies equals service details get target constructor get parameter types basically, and this dependency instances, I mistyped that, equals new object array with this dependencies dot linked. Okay, so basically this is our service details, which we are going to try to instantiate. Those are the dependencies, and those are the dependencies that are already instantiated. So for now, none of them. Okay, so we're going to have a few methods here. So first one, public boolean is resolved. So in order for service to be resolved, all the dependency instances should be populated. There should be non-null. So this dependency instances, or if dependency instance equals null, return false, otherwise return true. Okay, another method that we're going to have, also public boolean is dependency required plus dependency type. So with this method we're going to check if this service details or actually needs that dependency. So in order to do that, these dependencies for, and now if dependency is assignable from dependency type, well, return true, otherwise return false. Okay, so one more method, and actually I'll put it here, public void add dependency instance. This is going to be object dependency, like that, dependency or instance actually. So instance get class is going to be our dependency type. Okay, so we need to do something similar to this here, but with the for loop. So for e to this dependencies length, like that. Why we're doing that? Because obviously this instance we need to put it in this array, but we need to know in which location, because when we are instantiating an object from here, those constructor parameters that we are going to use need to be in the specific order, so that's why we're doing that now. Okay, so let's see how to do it now. If dependency, these dependencies from E or I is assignable from dependency type, in that case you can just say this dependency instances I equals instance, and also return to not waste anyone's time. So dependency type is actually only used once, so I don't think we need that variable here. It's not. You can just say instance class, like that. Okay, so I think those are the three methods that we're going to need. Okay, so now let's just create the getters and setters. I would suggest let's insert them here, getters and setters for those three, like that. Okay, yeah, getters only, not setters, sorry. Okay, now let's go to the service. Let's create it first. Service instantiation service, or actually services, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have a list of service details, like that. We're going to call this instantiate services and beans. I'm going to accept a set of service details mapped services, and it's also going to throw service instant. What was the service instantiation exception, like that. Pretty long method, but yeah. Alright, so now let's move to finally creating probably the most important implementation, and that is the service instantiation service. Okay, creating the service. Services, instantiation service implementation, services, instantiation service. Okay, great. So let's create some private fields. Private final instantiation configuration, if you remember that we just created. Also objects in instantiation service, also that we yesterday that we made. Now we're going to have linked list of enqueued service details. Do we have generic for this? No. Enqueued service details. Enqueued service details. Final. What else? List of class. All available classes. So private final. Okay, so let's create the constructor with those two, and those are going to be called new linked list, and this is going to be called new array list. We're using linked list for this one because if you remember, the service scanning service will return a sorted collection. That's why we want to retain that order, because starting from services that have 0 parameters, it will be much faster than to make instances of the other services that require. That way we won't have many iterations. Also, the iteration is something that I'm going to explain in a bit. Okay, so let's have one method, private void init, like this, and we're going to take service, actually a set of service details, set like that. Okay, so here we're going to call that. So this init mapped services. Okay, so let's rename that. Okay, so let's clear this enqueued like that, and this all available. We don't need to do that, but for me it is better to be sure it doesn't cost you anything. So okay, so on map services, iterate them, service details like that. Now what we need to do here is we need to say these enqueued services add new enqueued service details like that. If you remember, what was that? That was just the object that we made here. So we are basically transferring those service details into those queue type of services, just to be easier for this specific class to work with them. Then all available classes, add service details, get service type. And also we need now to add the beans as well to those all available classes. So this all available classes are all service details, yeah, get beans stream map, so method get return type, and then collect those to something, convert that with one expression, fine. Let's see here, can we do something to make that look a little more prettier? Yeah, I think we can. Okay, so what we did here, also instead of just adding the service itself, we are also adding the beans that service might contain. Like for example, the service 2 over here had this bean, so basically first we added the actual test service 2 itself, and then we scanned, got its bean methods, and we added the other service there as well, so it can be then easier to manage. Alright, so for now let's leave it that way, and let's continue here. So now we need to create our main loop. So this is going to be while this enqueued is empty, while it's not empty, do something. Also we need to have one count here, counter equals 0. So if counter equals, or like that, counter is more than this configuration get maximum allowed iterations, throw new service instantiation exception, max number of allowed iteration reached. Okay, actually like that, I guess. So like that. So we replace that here with max number of iterations, like so, and we pass it here max number of iterations. Now let's just create our constant field, maximum number of allowed iterations was reached. Like so. Okay, so we're doing this because we, as you will see, we'll have a case where we can enter into infinite loop. That's not great because the user will never know what happened. So we're setting a maximum number of iterations, and by default, if you remember, we set that to 100,000, which is, I think, in my case, more than enough. But still, we are providing configuration with that because, let's say, if the client has an enormous enterprise project with 5 million classes, I don't know, this might take more than 100,000 iterations, so that's why we are adding it as an option. Okay, so once we figure that out, let's move to actually the logic. So let's say this enqueued services, what was it, get, no, delete, remove first, yeah. So we can introduce this into a variable like that. So what this does is we're getting the first element from the list and we're actually removing it. So now if enqueued service details is resolved, that is great. We can sort of proceed with creating instances, stuff like that. Otherwise, okay, so otherwise we'll have to see what's wrong actually and see if there's an error to be thrown and stuff like that. But here also we're going to increase our counter as well. So no, I mean here, like that. So if it's successful, we're not going to iterate our counter, but if it's not, we are. So now we need to say this instantiation service, which is the service that we created yesterday. Create instance. Service. So basically, include service, get service details, include service, get dependency instances, like so. Okay. I would suggest doing it like that, just so it looks a little cleaner. Or no, wait, sorry. Let's just say include service, get service details introduced to local variable, like that. And also include service, get dependency instances as well, like that, because we're going to need the service details later as well. So service details, dependency instances. So we're going to have one method which is going to be called register let's see, register, like that, something like that. So service details we're passing here, and also this register beans, also service details passing. Okay. Okay. I would suggest let's go with actually registering beans. Seems like a little bit easier task. So service details, get beans for. So for each bean we need to create, if you remember, there was one object that we created, it was called service bean details. So service bean details equals new service bean details, and that accepted the bean type, so bean get return type, origin method, which is the bean, and the root service, so service details, like so. So let me just rename that to bean method, like so. Okay. Now we are calling this instantiation service, create bean instance, bean details, and also here we're calling this register instantiated service from bean details. Okay. So to explain what's going on here, basically now we have this service here. If you don't remember, calling create instance will actually set the instance of that service details. So going back here, now we have in this service details we have this instance already set. So thanks to that, now we can iterate all those methods, and we can call create bean instance. If we go to the implementation, actually I'm pressing Ctrl Alt and B to get directly into the implementation. class. What we have here, we have the root instance, which is exactly that, service bean details get root service get instance. So we're using that root instance to be able to invoke the method and get the object instance, and from there is the same. So that's pretty much it, what this method is doing. Now, to register instantiated service, let's see what we're going to do. Okay, so service details, actually no, sorry, we need to say now this enqueue service details, and we need to iterate those. So enqueue service or enqueue service. Now, if you remember, there was one method, enqueue service, is dependency required. So we are checking if the dependency is required, like that. If that is the case, we can say enqueue service add dependency instance, service details get instance, like that. Basically, by adding this and then calling is resolved, we can basically achieve the whole logic by checking if this thing is if we manage to set all the dependencies here, that means that this thing will be resolved here. Okay, so if you remember, also service details had one thing called dependent services, so we'll have to take care of that as well. So let's go here and say, obviously we need now, since this service details, because we're calling register instantiated service from two places. This time, in this case, it's a bean, so bean doesn't have dependent services because it doesn't depend on anything. So we'll need to check. We'll need to check here, basically, if service details is instance of service details, or actually, sorry, my mistake. If not, service details is instance of bean what was service bean details, like so. So if it's not, then we can actually proceed with the setting the dependent services. And in order to do that, we actually have to create one more list here that I forgot. List of service details, and this is those are the already instantiated services, like so. This instantiated services. Services for new array list. Also, when we go to init, we can go instantiated services. Sorry. Like that, clear them out. Instantiated services. Now, when we go to register instantiated service, we can add it here. So this instantiated services add service details, like that. So we know that everything that is in this list is already done. Okay, so the method that we are going to need, let's call it update dependent services service details, like so. So this update dependent services. Okay, so actually here we can, no, it's okay, we can rename it here. New service. So we want that new service, since we just created it, we want to notify those services that this one relies on, that this one is created and it's depending on them. So in order to do that, we can say new service get target constructor, get parameter types, iterate those, and then for each instantiated service, we need to check now if parameter type is assignable from instantiated service get service type. That means that this service, that means that the new service relies on that service. So we can say instantiated service add dependent service new service, like so. That's what we need to do. And it might seem useless now, but when we go to the dependency container, this will play a really big role. It will make things really much more easier. Alright, so let's just rename that to, I don't know, service details, for example. Okay, so we're calling that here, like so. Everything seems correct except for this one that we just need to fix now. So as you can see, we actually removed the first one, so this service is missing. Now if it's not resolved, we need to bring it back, so hopefully it gets resolved after the other services are being instantiated and new beans are being added. So this enqueue service details add wast, like so. So it gets on the back of the queue again. Yeah, and why we're using linked list for this? Well, linked list actually is designed that way, so when we do those things, we're not losing performance as we would do if we were using array list, so that's why. Okay, so, and let's return these instantiated services here, like so. Okay, so seems okay. We're only missing one thing here, and that is, what if service 2 is relying on something like a service that is not present? Well, we need to check that as well. I mean, this way it will work. It will just reach the maximum number of iterations, and we'll just say maximum number of iterations was achieved, but was reached. But to avoid performance issues and to be for the exception to be a little more specific, we should create another method for that as well. So let's just call it private void check for missing services, for example. Okay, so we are going to receive here again a set of service details, like that, mapped classes like this, and those mapped classes for each of them, mapped services, sorry. Okay, for each of those service details. Now we need to check. So service details, get target constructor, get parameter types for each, like so. And now for each parameter type, we need to sort of check if this parameter type is present in this all available classes list that we, if you remember, we just populated with everything that was scanned. So actually this method will be called right here, check for missing services, like that. Okay, and that will also throw service instantiation exception. Now we need another method called private boolean is assignable service present, or actually assignable type present for this specific class. So here we have to say all available classes for each. Service type. So if this class is assignable from service type, return true, otherwise return false. Okay, so if not, this is assignable type present, parameter type. Now it gets tricky, so we need to throw new service instantiation exception, and let's see what we need to message here. No implementation found for, or okay, could not create instance of this. Because maybe, or let's just say dot and then parameter this parameter instance parameter implementation was not found. That looks pretty much okay. Now we need to say the first one is the service details, get service type, get name, and the second one is parameter type, get name. Okay, so this goes into a constant right here, final string code not find like so. So down here where we're throwing this, we can say but not find constructor param message. Okay, so I think that it looks pretty but now we have to test it, I guess. Okay, we did that as well, so I think our job here is done. So I was talking how this thing is complex. It actually took like 140 lines of code, so it's not that complex after all. Okay, so service details. Now we have to create it maybe here. Services, instantiation service, like that, equals new services, instantiation service implementation, which will accept configuration annotations. Oh, okay, so I forgot to add it here. So private final instantiation configuration instantiations. So this instantiations equals new, like that, and also okay. So instantiations and a new object instantiation service, but I would prefer this one to be actually here, like that, but instead of implementation, just the service. So object like that. Let's just do it like that to be a little more readable. Okay. Okay, so now let's move to actually instantiation service, instantiate services and beans, service details, like so. We can actually rename that to mapped services, like that. Create local variable. Okay, so at this point it should be loading our services correctly. So let's run and see if something really bad happens. No, nothing happens. Okay, so in this case, let's just try to, I don't know, let's try to run them like this is the constructor. Okay, test service 2, we have post construct, which shouldn't be valid. So let's see, testing post for service 2. We should see nothing because we have one parameter. Okay, that's the case. But if we remove that, let's see what will happen. Okay, so seems like it did work. Okay. What will happen if we have, you can see that we have the bean for the other service here. So if we say private final other service like that, and take it from the constructor, actually let's remove that. So what will happen now? I think that we should get an error. Let's see. Okay, so what we got here, maximum number of allowed iterations was reached, 100,000. That's because we are depending on that bean, but that bean can never be instantiated because the actual service cannot be instantiated. So that's a proper behavior. The client should never do that, as it is in Spring. In Spring also you cannot do things like that. So that's proper logic as well. Now what happens if service 1 depends on other service? Well, let's see. Private final other service, like so. Okay, and in our post construct we void on init or init cout hello, and let's just print the other service, get class, get name. Let's see if that works. Sorry about that. No, didn't want to work. Okay. Oh, we should remove it from here as well. Okay, so test service 2, test service 1, other service. Okay, what happens if we do that? Just like so. Will we get this error again? Okay, so we did get it. Alright. I guess we'll have to find out why. Okay, so let's see. Registering beans. Okay. Sorry, my bad. As you can see, actually, test service 2 relies on test service 1, so it's the same. Test service 1 cannot rely on something that will be created after test service 2 is created, because test service 2 relies on test service 1 and stuff like that. So that will not happen here, but we can do it on some other service. Doesn't need to be here. So let's go to main injector, let's say, and let's just create it here. Okay, so let's create, first let's make this a service, and now private final other service like that. Okay, so after getting a service, we can say void that. So print hello plus this other service. Sorry, get plus get name. Let's see. Okay, so it did actually get it. So that's fine, but let's test it now with actual interfaces to see what's going on, because now we can say other service contract, let's say, let's call it like that. And let's make the magic, let's actually make the other service implement that other service contract. And now let's go here and let's depend on other service contract. Let's run it and let's see if this fails. No, it still works. And you see that we're getting the implementation, not the contract, not the interface, so that's fine. Okay, so I guess that's it for the actual instantiation of the services. As you can see, it's working properly. What else we can test? Yeah, we can, I guess I forgot to test the custom annotations the previous time, so let's just create a custom annotations for services and beans to see if it's working as well. So custom service retention policy runtime interface target element type. Okay, so let's go to, let's say, test service 1 and let's remove it actually first, and let's run it and let's see what we're getting. So we're getting could not create instance of this because this parameter is missing. As you remember, we just threw that exception from the instantiation service right down below here. Actually, where did we throw that exception? Right here. Here it is. So that's proper as well, because this service basically is not being mapped anywhere. So let's try with custom service. We should again get this error because yeah, we're not specifying it anywhere. But if we go to the main, where was it? Our main method, here it is. So if we say run with new magic configuration, like so, and now we say annotations, add custom service annotation, custom service.class, and so let's see. Okay, so nice, it works. Let's try with custom bean as well. Target element type method. Okay, finally autocomplete works. Let's go to, let's say, let's create new class. Let's call it model mapper, for example, fully void print map, string map, let's say, like that. Okay, so test service 1 is going to have bean public model mapper, return new model mapper. Okay, so here, as you can see, we're also going to test the instantiation functionality, because we're relying on one bean, other service contract, which is created in the service 2, and now we're going to rely on another bean model mapper, like that, which is from the other service. So that's also something that you can see as an edge case. So let's just print this model mapper.map and see if that works. Okay, so it does work. Now let's go to the test service 1 and let's remove that bean, see what's going on now. Okay, so we get the exception, but if we say custom bean, we will get the exception. I think yes. Yeah, because we haven't set anywhere that we're going to, you know, have this annotation. So add custom bean annotation, custom bean dot class, like that. Let's run it and let's see if we're getting a result now. Okay, so we're getting, so our annotation configuration also works. So basically not much left to do about this task. I think we managed to do it. Sorry, not this task, but this task. This service, I think it looks pretty clean. Hopefully you understand it, because it's probably the most complex part of the whole project. So with that said, we're ready with the instantiating services, and the only one thing left to do is creating the dependency container functionality and also creating the startup class, because currently, if you see, basically I'm using post construct to start my applications, which is not great, because post construct is like basically a constructor actually we don't even need post construct in our application, but we just have it. So we're going to create something like a startup annotation that will only be called when the whole application has been started. So yeah, that's for the last task.